Kylah Simmons, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Very happy to have you. So just to go through real quick your bio for people. So you are a graduate of Boston University and majored in TV producing management slash broadcasting. You're now a producer here in the local Syracuse area, which is the area where I live also. You're a producer for the local NBC and CBS affiliates. You write scripts and choose stories, that sort of thing. For the live shows, you're kind of talking in the ear of the person doing the news to keep them sort of on track with time and that sort of stuff. I'm sure various other things. And yeah, so I first became interested in having you on the podcast when I came across an article online that you had an incident some years ago where you were detained in the Atlanta airport, and it was clearly because you had stuttered on something, and so for whatever reason that triggered them to detain you. Can you tell us that story and kind of the aftermath?
Yeah, so for undergrad, I attended a small school called Kalamazoo College, which is like a small school in Michigan. So for my junior year of college, I went on study abroad for 6 months to Costa Rica. And so I was coming back for a break in between my study abroad program, and I was going through customs in Atlanta, Georgia. And so when I was in customs, they wanted to know what country I came from, and I always stutter on Costa Rica. It's just a hard word for me to say. And so I responded, and I had like a block when I was saying Costa Rica. And so the guy looked at me funny and said that I needed to step aside and that they were taking me into customs. And so they took me to the back, and they were asking me questions and just like, why was I coming back from Costa Rica, if I was from Costa Rica, and all of these questions. And I was stuttering throughout the whole time being in customs. And then they thought it was something wrong with me. And so I was just explaining that I was a person who stutters and that my speech pattern is broken up a little and that there was nothing wrong with me. And the person who was interviewing me accused me of lying. And so I was in the back by myself, and they took my phone, so I couldn't talk to my parents or anything. And they had me in the back for about an hour, and then they finally released me. But I ended up missing my connecting flight, and I was really upset and shaken. And so I went to the supervisor downstairs of the Atlanta airport, and I spoke to her, and I told her what had happened, and she told me that there was not much that they could do. And so I said, well, I would like to file a report. So when I returned home, I did the necessary paperwork, and I told them what happened so that it could be addressed. And then I ended up telling Camp Say, I attended Camp Say when I was in high school. And so I told Taro, who's the founder, I told him what had happened. So he had me write an article for their website. And then I basically told all of the Stutter organizations what had happened, which gained a lot of attention. And someone from the Huffington Post wanted me to tell my story so that the story could be more publicized. So that and so I wrote an article that really blew up on the internet, which is part of the reason why I got into journalism, because I saw how powerful using media could help create change and give people a voice. And so after the incident happened, about a year later, I got a written apology from Customs, and they told me that they were implementing training on how to deal with people who stutter, and how to train their staff to interact with people with disabilities. And then I forgot to mention that prior to getting that apology, I actually teamed up with the Stuttering Foundation, and we created Stutter cards. So a Stutter card is a card that says that you are a person who stutters, and it has a list of facts about people who stutter. So if you interact with an officer or someone who may not understand who a person who stuttered, like how like they talk or their behaviors, it helps them understand more, even if you aren't able to verbally talk. So now when I go through customs or through the airport, I always carry the card along, like with my ID or passport, so that they could better understand my speech impediment, and so that I wouldn't be looked at as someone who's suspicious. And so that's what came out of the incident. Yeah.
So I had no idea until now that you were connected also with that creation of the, not sure what the official term is, but the I Stutter card. What's that, Kylah?
Oh, I was just saying that, yeah, that's the name of the card, the I Stutter card.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that had come up in a one of the support groups with obviously other folks that stutter, where a mom had asked that question about her son, who, and it was a larger group, so I didn't see the mom, but she asked that question. She was concerned that her young son would be, if pulled over by the police because he had a severe stutter, that would put him at higher risk to be misunderstood, or the police officer might think something different was going on than what was actually going on. And someone had brought up that having that I Stutter ID card can be, can be a very valuable thing. So when they're coming up, you give them your license, you give them that. And so now they know up front. And because it looks like something official, which it is from the Stuttering Foundation, that looks authoritative as compared to, and I've experienced this as a teenager when the police come up and you, at least in my case, would become way more likely to stutter even more, because I was, concerned about the judgment that they might make. And police look at teenage boys like they're oftentimes up to no good, which I'm not going to deny that we were at times. But certainly good to clarify things up front, whether you're at the airport or whether it's, that type of interaction with the police. So that's awesome that you were instrumental in that coming into existence. So is that something that, well, you said you bring it with you in the airports, but is that something that's kind of comforting no matter what the situation is, if you need to identify yourself? Because one of the challenges, right, is if our stuttering is severe enough in that moment, we might not even be able to tell them up front what's going on. So, and one thing which I had spoken about with Carl Coffey in that episode is that one thing that's different about stuttering, perhaps, than the vast majority of conditions is fluent people, pretty much all of them have stuttering moments, right? Like not like speech blocks like people that stutter will have, but they have stuttering moments. And when they're stuttering, it typically means that in that moment, at least, they don't know exactly what they want to say. Because once they know what they want to say, they say it. And so when listeners see that at first, they can oftentimes assume it's the type of stuttering that they see in the other 99% of people, and that maybe it means something. Maybe they're really anxious, or maybe they're hiding something, or maybe they're drunk, or whatever might be going on, right? But it oftentimes means something when a fluent person starts stuttering. So they can see that from us at first, and it might look just like what they've seen from, thousands of fluent people in a moment. So that's what they think is happening. And then we keep stuttering. They're like, wow, something's really going on. So devoid of that education, that extra awareness that, wait a second, everybody in the TSA, was that in the TSA? Is that who you were? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was the, I guess, customs. Yeah. TSA.
Mm. Gotcha. So that was a big change then, because that's a national thing. So, presumably if they're following through on it, everybody that comes through that organization now is getting at least that some training on, hey, keep in mind there's 1% of the population that has a legit stutter. If you see them start to stutter, that doesn't mean what you might assume it, could possibly mean from others. So figure out early if this is a person that stutters, or if this is a fluent person that seems to not know which country they just came in from.
Yeah.
Right, that sort of thing. So that's fantastic that you had that experience. And have you had any instances afterwards where you felt like it really came in handy? I mean, obviously that it can because of that original situation, but have you had any instances?
Not me personally, but I did get messages from people. Like there was one person who told me that she gave the card to her husband who stutters, and he was pulled over by the police, and he gave the police his card, his ID card, and his stutter card, and it really helped him, and it helped the officer understand him more, and so she just wanted to thank me for helping to create the card, because she said that it was really beneficial for her husband, and it helped him and in a similar situation that I was in. And so I've gotten a lot of messages just saying how helpful it's been, but I haven't personally I haven't really had to use it as much because I haven't been traveling, or I haven't had any policemen, I guess, interactions or anything. But yeah, I do feel comfortable having it because I know that it could, I don't think there's any negatives of, having extra security as a person who stutters.
Mm. That's awesome. And in that kind of a situation that the person who reached out to you about with her husband, that could potentially, be a life and death type of situation. So that could literally, maybe has saved a couple lives already that we're not aware of, and it's not too many things we do in regular everyday life ends up saving lives unless we work in, like an ER surgeon or, various lines of work like that. So that's awesome. So you had mentioned Camp Say, that you had gone to Camp Say when you were a kid. And for those who don't know, SAY, S-A-Y, stands for Stuttering Association of the Young. And they've got a camp. Is this one camp or multiple camps that they run?
It's one camp.
Gotcha. So it's a camp, I believe, in North Carolina. And
yeah. They recently moved it to, I believe, Pennsylvania a few years back. But yeah, when I went, it was in North Carolina or Asheville. Yeah.
Gotcha. It's run by a very nice gentleman named Taro Alexander. And I first came across that when I saw the movie My Beautiful Stutter. There was a screening of it at Syracuse University maybe 6 months ago or so. Time is distorted now with COVID. Maybe 7 or 8 or 9 months ago or something. But it was a screening at Syracuse University where there was like 100 people that came, which I thought was a pretty impressive turnout. And I got to be a panelist for it with 2 other people that stuttered. But there was a Q&A session after that panelist discussion. And I mean, there was a lot of questions and there were more lined up and we had to call time at the end. So there was a lot of interest. I was very, it made an impression on me how many people showed up and how many people seemed to be really touched by that movie. And so can you talk about your experience with it? What were you, before you went to it, did you have any expectations? Like, did you have any idea what impact it was going to have on your life in advance?
Yeah. So my mom found out about the camp after, I think she was watching Good Morning America, and they featured it. Back then it was called Camp Our Time, and then they changed it to Camp Say, but she had saw it on the news, and she saw that I was, really having challenges with my stuttering, and she wanted me to be around other kids who stuttered. And so prior to the camp, I didn't really have any expectations. I was a little nervous, I guess. But when I went there, I really enjoyed the camp because I've always been into the arts, and the camp focuses a lot on fine art, so theater and music and dance. And so I attended camp, I think for about 2 or 3 years. And it was a great experience because every year I saw the same campers from past years. And then I had a chance to meet new people who stuttered. And so it was also a great experience because some of the counselors were people who stuttered. So I wasn't only surrounded by kids, but adults who stuttered as well. And it's a great camp because you can be yourself, and you don't have to be self-conscious about how you talk or act around other people. And sometimes when I was at the camp, I forgot that I stuttered, and I was just being a kid without feeling self-conscious. And so, after that, I was a counselor for 1 summer. And so it was nice to be around the kids and just to see myself in the campers. Yeah.
And Was the impact on your life pretty much immediate? Like when you got back from that first camp, were you were you more confident in who you were and more like less feeling the need to totally hide your stuttering from the world? If indeed that's how you were feeling before the camp.
Yeah, camp was always like a recharge because it always happened a few weeks before the start of school. So it was a really good place to go for me. So I felt recharged and more confident about my stutter when it came to facing the school year. And so yeah, I definitely felt the positive impact of being at Camp Say. And it was just a great place to go and just to know that I wasn't alone. Even after the camp, we always kept in contact with each other on social media and everything. So we knew that we could always, contact one another if we were dealing with any challenges throughout the year. Yeah.
That you were, would you say that was the first time you felt like you were not kind of isolated out on a lonely island when it came to your stutter?
Yeah, because I was with the campers like 24/7 for about 2 weeks. So, or 1 week. I forget how many weeks it was. But yeah, I was around campers who stuttered all of the time. So I there wasn't a point where I felt alone at camp.
That's powerful. And so, I mean, this is kind of asking a rhetorical question, but you would obviously recommend it for other kids that stutter.
Yeah, I went in high school, but I wish I had known about the camp when I was younger. And so I would recommend it. And I think the younger the better because it really does impact kids, especially those who were younger. And you could see that as they got older, they were more confident in who they were. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend camp. And then also, state has an organization in New York City, and they're creating one in Washington, D.C. So it's like a year-round organization as well. So even if you're in those areas, it's a good organization to join as well if you want like a year-round support.
Mm. And so I'm not familiar with those specifics. Like, do they do support groups kind of through the year in New
Yeah,
York City?
yeah. So say I believe like they meet. I know in New York City they always put on like shows. Like I know that the kids always worked on skits and music and dance. I'm not sure how often they met or that they meet, but I know that it's like an organization where kids can go and just have a support system while also incorporating the fine arts year round. And they always have performances and celebrations. Yeah, and a lot of fun razors and stuff like that.
Well, and I find it interesting. This just occurred to me a few weeks ago, but um, there's kind of a long list of actors and actresses that have, uh, that have dealt with the challenges of being people that stutter,
Mhm.
right? And most of us that stutter kind of know the list. Samuel Jackson, Bruce Willis, Emily Blunt, Marilyn Monroe. I'm getting a little more old school. And on the note of Marilyn Monroe, Um, so I've read a couple things that say that her kind of patented style of talking, and I'm going to be horrible at replicating, but kind of a breathy, like a breathiness, and maybe her tone too was adapted for her because that made it easier for her to not struggle as much with her speech. And we all know, or uh, from individual to individual, you hear various things that people have done that have helped them not struggle as much with their stutter. So there are these seemingly random things, and that one seems like one with Marilyn Monroe. She kind of changed her voice so that she was, maybe in character for being Marilyn or something. I don't know, whatever it was, but I find it interesting that there's a lot of actors and actresses on that list. Mm-hmm. And I've got a podcast episode coming up in a few weeks that's lined up where we're going to speak with the founder and the director of an organization called BEAT, Bridging Education and Art Together, down in New York City. And not Tiro, but Travis from I don't know if you know Travis, but he's going to come on the episode also, and talk about Say's perspective. But it's interesting, this art connection and theater and acting and connection with a seemingly high percentage of actors had dealt with stuttering. Yeah. And perhaps there was some connection to their becoming skilled, talented actors connected with sort of getting just becoming more of a master of controlling because with actor, when you're playing a role, right, you're not just being yourself. So you have to control the way that you speak, your cadence, your pausing, your, whether you're using an angry tone or not, all that there's tons of little micro controls, I guess, although they say that it's not control. It's like just getting in character and then let it happen. I can't speak to that from experience, but you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I feel like, because like with Say, a lot of kids felt comfortable, acting and singing and dancing, and I feel like the arts is another way of communication, as well as media too. I feel like the arts and media, you can kind of say what you want to say if you can't communicate it verbally. So like if you sing or paint or dance, it's a way to express yourself. And I've even heard of people who are into acting that if they like you said, like change, their voice or tone, it makes their speech more fluent, or it makes them more confident in speaking. So yeah, I feel like the fine arts really does help people express themselves in ways that they may not feel that they can't otherwise. Which is why when I was growing up, my mom put me in a lot of fine arts with dancing and painting and acting. So I feel like that's really helped me as well with my speech.
And do you think, why do you think that is? You think it's just confidence, or maybe a combination of confidence and getting used to not holding back, right? If you want to do something, if you're feeling it, don't hesitate, just do it.
Yeah. A, I think it's a lot of confidence, and like like if you dance or if you're in theater, you're in front of a lot of people sometimes, so you kind of have to push yourself, and sometimes it's to the point where you don't even think about your stutter, or you may be thinking about something else as well. But yeah, I think a lot of the times it's confidence and then repetition. Like if you practice over and over again, you get more comfortable doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. Courage also, perhaps, right? Your courage grows. You know you can, or there's this base of experience where before getting out there and say, you know, dancing in front of a bunch of people or uh, singing or whatever, there was anxiety, there were nerves, but then you got out there and you did it and you realize, hey, the more I get out there and do it, the more that comfort zone essentially expands. And now I'm comfortable, performing in front of 300 people, whereas I might have been terrified about that before.
Yeah.
Um, so, kind of going backwards in time. So, pre-camp, say, and the vast majority of us folks at Stutter have some oftentimes pretty dark memories, very challenging times in our life before getting to a point of more acceptance and acceptance, hey, I'm a person that stutters. I'm not going to stop living my life. But when you're a little kid, and you start, say, getting made fun of or just becoming aware that we are different. Are you like so many of us? You have some pretty tough memories.
Yeah. So when I was younger, so I started stuttering at 3 when I was 3 years old. My father stutters, so I think that's where I got my stutter from. But when I was younger, before middle school, I was really comfortable with my stuttering. Like I didn't know that I didn't know the term, but I knew that I spoke different from other people, but I was like just comfortable talking and just just stuttering and just trying to get out my words. And but then when I went to middle school, people made me aware. So like when I read out loud, like from a book or something, or did a class presentation, people laughed, or they made me aware that it was something wrong with my stuttering. And so that's where I felt really self-conscious, because I was brought I was made to feel like the way I spoke was a problem, which made me really self-conscious and really quiet. And one time when I was reading out loud in class, somebody actually pulled out. I think they had like a digital camera or something, but they hit the camera, but they recorded my audio of me stuttering because they thought it was funny. And so that really hurt my feelings, and it made me really quiet. And as a res- as a result, I was really reserved, and I didn't like to talk. And so when I got to high school, my mom found out about the NSA, the National Stuttering Association. They had like a teen group called Twist. And so from there, I had a chance to meet other teens who stuttered, and eventually I went to the NSA conference. I think I went to about 2 or 3 conferences. But yeah, I was really I went through a lot in middle school, and it was one of the most challenging parts of me being a person who stutters.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I was in middle school when I first started getting made fun of about it, and and that I don't remember it being a problem. I mean, like you, my parents tell me that I started stuttering from the time I started talking when I was 3 or whatever, but I don't remember caring about it or noticing it. Just a carefree kid, but then started getting made fun of, and it kind of ramped up over the course of a couple of years. And so by the 7th or 8th grade, I kind of made the decision that I'm just not going to give people, uh, these bullies essentially, and there were only maybe a few, I don't know, maybe a handful of them. Most kids were not making fun of me, but the ones that were really get your attention, right? And they sort of set up camp in your mind. And I thought, I'm just, if it's not going to come out right, then I'm not going to say it. And so essentially I just became super quiet, which, as you can probably tell, is not my personality, to not share anything. And yeah, and then it just sort of, I don't know what my plan was. Like, was my plan to do that for the rest of my life? I don't know. But when you're that age, you're not thinking on a larger scale. You're just trying to get through each day, with as little sort of shame and embarrassment as possible. But yeah, and for me, it was, I never found any, so I was brought to speech therapists, but meeting with one fluent person doesn't really fight the sense of isolation at all. But never knew anybody else that stuttered until I was much older. And I think that's, for any parents watching this, we're kids, teenagers, whatever, being around other people that stutter, there's something really powerful about it. Because you look at the numbers, right? They say 1% of the population stutters. But, and I'm not sure what percentage of those folks are maybe so mild that it's not even an issue. I'm not sure. But it certainly doesn't seem like 1 in 100 people stutters, because I don't meet very often in regular life people that stutter. Now, assuming that the experts on this that say it's 1% are not totally wrong, and that there are quite a few of us, that indicates the fact that we never seem to meet them. And it goes with what many of us have encountered from meeting now many folks that stutter in the support communities. Many people are just zipping it, essentially, right? They're not talking, wanting to, to essentially stay in the closet and not be seen as a person that stutters, because we've got that shame and all that stuff that goes back deep into childhood. And so I think that when we get to the point where we're willing to talk and stutter, and we realize that it actually is okay, it's really not the end of the world to stutter. And anybody that would make fun of us, obviously it's a different universe in middle school. That's its own group of humans, But when we get to adulthood, especially, anybody that would make fun of us about our stutter is just, as Nina G, the comedian, described it, stuttering can be a great asshole detector.
Yeah.
Right? If they double down on it, like at first people can be confused, like, what's going on? Or, we have to, in my opinion, it's valuable to forgive people their initial reaction before they have any idea what's going on. as long as it's not a totally mean one. But if they continue to be like that after they know what's going on, well, then, then it's totally on them and an indicator of their character, not an indicator of our, character in any way. Share with that. So when you're going around regular life now, and I know there's not as much of this with the coronavirus times, we're not out as much, but when you get those reactions from people, what in your experience is the best way to deal with it and to think about it after it happens?
Yeah. I know how to hide my stuttering. Well, and so I've been trying to not hide it or find ways to kind of cover it up. But when people do hear that I stutter, or like if they laugh or make a comment, I tell them that I'm a person who stutters and that's why I talk like this. They kind of feel bad for the most part, or they're unaware, I guess. Yeah, I've dealt with people who have been rude even after explaining, but if anything, like if it gets out of hand, like if it's a customer service thing, or like if they're like a waiter or something, and they're still being disrespectful, I'll like talk to the manager or something like that. But for the most part, when I tell people that I stutter after they have like a kind of weird reaction, they understand. And yeah.
And what about the aftermath of it? Because I know when I was younger, I could really let it stick in my mind when you get that reaction, and I would be, kind of brooding about it for hours or days or even longer. Is that something that you've experienced and that you kind of have come to a strategy for dealing with?
Yeah, I feel more bad if I stutter and they have a reaction and I don't tell them that I stutter. I think about that more. Like if someone laughs and I stutter and then I just don't address it, then I think about it more and then I feel more self-conscious. But when I tell people that I stutter and that's the reason why I'm talking a certain way, I find myself not thinking about it as much because I'm happy that I was just honest and that I kind of like taught them something new, that people talk different ways, and so this is why I talk the way that I talk. And so yeah, I find myself thinking about it more when I don't speak up and tell them that I'm a person who stutters, because it kind of feels like I didn't stand up for myself.
That's awesome. And the way I think about that, because I've had that experience also, is and for me, for myself, I would put in that category also when I know that I'm gonna stutter when I say something, but I say it anyway. Just stutter, and so that my point doesn't stay locked in my head, that it gets out. And also the situation you just described, where somebody has some kind of reaction and you kind of stand up for ourselves and really for all of us in a way, because like you said, we're teaching them something. So when they encounter people that stutter, if they do in the future, they're going to be more aware, or at least, they should be. And experience is a great teacher, right? So they're probably going to remember that moment because they're like you said, they probably feel a little bit bad about it, like, oh, I had a not so good reaction, and so that'll probably stick with them. But the way I think about it, when we say that thing we want to say, or we, share that we're a person that stutters, and then we walk away from that interaction, our respect for ourselves grows. Whereas if we don't, our respect for ourselves can sometimes shrink a little bit. And human beings, we feel way better when we respect ourselves than when we don't, right? And so I think on multiple levels, both for the education of the public and that person we were talking to, for our own self-respect in the moment and our own self-respect going forward, it's super valuable to just take that honesty approach, right? And it's not like, this is not super complicated. I'm not saying it's necessarily easy and we have to get used to doing it, but it's really just being honest, right? And not feeling like we need to hide in the closet about who we are or what just happened. And when people react like that, once again, I think in the vast majority of cases, they're thinking that they kind of know what they're seeing, right? That this is a fluent person having a really disfluent moment, and that there's something else going on here, and that, maybe it is funny. Maybe you still shouldn't laugh at somebody for having a disfluent moment, but this is, some things are naturally funny or funnier to people, right? There's a reason why. I know you're in the news business, not on the like maybe production of film side of the house, but certainly people that do drama have used stuttering moments historically, right? You'll see it when you're watching a show or a movie. If you had, my wife likes to have the subtitles on, the closed captioning, I guess they call it, and you'll see them say stuttering fairly often down below. Now, it's not a character that stutters, but they're I don't know, whatever the situation may be in the show, and the character's like, oh, well, they're using that dramatically for a reason, right? To indicate what's going on inside of the person's head, and that's a fluent person's head. It's not that they know what they want to say and they just can't say it. So that's what people think is happening at first. So it can be enormously valuable for us to just be open and honest. When in doubt with stuttering, in my opinion, be open and honest. But I get it. Our instinct, we all had that stage of life, and we probably still have that urge to just not have to deal with our stuttering. Just let it go, or don't take that extra time. Don't marshal that little bit of extra energy that it takes to say, no, what you're seeing there is a stutter, right? But when we do it, our confidence, our self-respect grows. So professionally, and we only have a few minutes left, but professionally, have you had challenges at times, whether people were misunderstanding what was going on with your stutter, or where maybe you felt internally like having the stutter was gonna stop you from achieving certain dreams, and how have you dealt with that and pursued your dreams anyway?
Yeah, so initially when I went to undergrad, I actually majored in psychology for undergrad because I wanted to become a speech pathologist. And so I thought that I was going to cure my stuttering, I guess. And so throughout half of probably like my sophomore year of undergrad, I found out that I didn't want to go into psychology, but I kept the degree and just took courses in TV and media production. And so that's why I went to grad school at Boston University so that I could further learn more about TV production and broadcasting because I found out that that was my true passion. And I didn't think that it was fair to myself to try to go into a career only to cure my stuttering. I thought it was better to do what I felt more comfortable doing, even though I was a person who stuttered. I just thought that I should just go for it and just pursue my passion. And so, yeah, I've with my stuttering, I've found challenges, especially now because as a producer, not only do you write the scripts and kind of stack the show, like I said earlier, you have to talk to the anchor like in their ear and on a live show, and you have to time them out and end. So if I stutter, that could mess up the time a lot. So I've had to find like little tricks and ways for me to talk so that when I do talk to the anchor, they're still on time. And so yeah, I've found challenges with that, like talking and being um, on a live show and having pressure to get things done on time. And then also with what I do now, you have to like pitch stories. But because I was open with my supervisor and I told her that I stuttered, we found ways around, um, we found ways that helped me more like to contribute my ideas and stories now that she knows that I'm a person who stutters. And so I'm glad that I was open with her so that, I could really improve, but also be honest, like with my speech impediment. Yeah.
And and you found that when you are open about it, that takes a lot of the pressure off and makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. Especially because I'm really quiet. I don't want people to think that like I don't like I don't want to talk to them. So now they understand that, oh, Kylah's quiet because she has a speech impediment, or you know, she may be a little bit more shy about it. So now people understand more.
So they don't confuse it with you being kind of standoffish or rude or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Which is, I mean, it feels better that more people know.
And when more people know, does that then have the effect of having you to like speak around them more than you might have, would you say?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I speak a little more now that I was open about my stutter. And it even took me a while. Like when I first got to the station, I didn't tell anyone that I stuttered, but I'm assuming that they knew if they did like the background check on me and like read up on the articles. I'm sure, or maybe I don't know, but um, it took me a while to even open up to them about my speech impediment.
Mm.
It took me a few months because this was like my first full-time job, so I had to deal with a lot with coming here and then with my speech impediment.
Gotcha. But it sounds like with the positive results, this is something that you'll be doing at future endeavors. It certainly has a big payoff. And yeah, because one of the big things I think that we tend to, that many of us tend to be concerned about is what other people think, right? I mean, that's probably where, I mean, those tough childhood memories were all about us being concerned about what other people thought, right? And so when we tell people, well, now we know what they think because we're the ones that educated them on how to think of, what's going on and how they should think about it, rather than we stutter sometimes, we're not sure if they know or not. And in our mind, oftentimes we can be thinking, well, did they think that just happened because I didn't know, the answer to this question? Or do they think that I'm really nervous or uptight? Or do they think I'm standoffish or not very nice? All that kind of stuff, right? We can cut through all that where we eliminate the guessing game where we're trying to read their mind, and nobody's a very good mind reader. In this world, it's not the nature of, how human communication happens. And so we can sort of take care of all of that, or at least 99% of it in one shot by just putting the elephant on the table. Here it is. As it turns out, other people, other than rooting for us in various ways, don't really care. Like people are much more concerned about their own problems than our problems, right? That's the nature of things. But at least now we know that the guessing game is over, right? They know what they're seeing. We know they know what they're seeing, and therefore we don't have to let that continue to take up any space in our own head as to worrying about, what anybody thinks. So, so if you could speak with your, 10-year-old self or 11-year-old self and put it in terms that a 10-year-old would understand, what would be your advice going into those potentially very difficult years, those, middle school, maybe early high school years?
Yeah, I guess, tell my younger self that it was gonna be okay, and that there's people and organizations that support you, and that just to not let your stuttering stop you from pursuing your dreams. Because even like when I was 10, I wouldn't have even imagined me talking or like being a news producer as a person who stutters. Like, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind. And so just to know that it's a period of your lifetime, and that even though what you're going through is challenging, it's only going to build you into who you are now. And so I think that's really important to look at your hardships or the challenges that you go through, and just take that as a way for you to grow. And I think it really does help you, make you into who you are, even though it was like a traumatizing experience.
So that reminds me of a quote from Michael Jordan, where he said that he had gotten that from his parents, that whatever negative things come along, grow from them, do what you have to do to turn them into a positive somehow. And when you get to know other people that stutter, you realize that there's a, almost a tight, what is a tight kind of group, like, fraternity, sorority, and whatever type of word you want to use there. But it's So you get this positive, this group, this tribe, if you will, um, and then we can actually become a source of inspiration for the fluent world also, because they don't know what it's like to stutter, but they can imagine, because almost everybody on this planet has felt social anxiety of some sort from time to time, and they can imagine that you have a speech impediment, a stutter, that would make things challenging. And so they see us achieving things, speaking up, living our life, not letting it stop us. That can really become something that inspires other people to stop letting the challenges in their life hold them back from going after what they want to go after. So, but I very much appreciate you joining us, Kylah. It was a great chat, and your story is a good one. And thanks for, that change of having the whole, TSA and customs and all that, get this extra stuttering on training is a big national change that I'm sure has prevented quite a few other instances with, folks that stutter getting a hard time that they shouldn't get. So we all appreciate that. And thanks for taking the time to chat.
Thank you.
Take care.